the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Almighty God, thank you for the privilege of serving on this board and the privilege of serving as representative for the community. We pray, O Lord, that you would be with us this evening as we discuss the business before us. Give us wisdom to speak what is right and what is appropriate. And Lord, may we never forget also the leaders of our city, the leaders of our state and nation. And Lord, we thank you for the privilege of serving and living in Jacksonville as we remember the Marines and others, Lord, other service members that have gone to serve and, Lord, to protect the best interests of our nation. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, and thank you for those joining us tonight. I do apologize since I know we are live that got a little late start, but we're here and we're ready to do business of Jacksonville. So thank you for our viewers. Thank you for my my board members for being here, and so we'll move on here. So let's. We haven't met in a little while, so I need to go ahead and the approval for tonight's agenda. I need a motion, please.
So moved.
Motion by Mr.
Second.
Springs, second by Ms. Vanderveer. Those in favor, raise your right hand, please. Okay, all in favor. Okay, thank you so much. So from last time we did meet, it was March the 12th. So it's been a little while, and everyone's had a chance to review those minutes from last time. So I need a motion on any corrections, deletions, whatever, or approve it as it is written.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the minutes from the March 12th meeting.
Okay, so
I
motion by Mr.
second.
Spring, motion by Ms. Moore. And those in favor, raise your hand, please. Okay. All right, great, thank you. All right, city council update. Mr. Bob Warden, how are you doing this evening?
Fine, sir.
Good.
You're doing well.
Yes, good. We're glad you're here.
Good to be here. Just a couple of, we just did some unified development ordinance text changes, just some of the languages to some of the planning documents that we use. And of course, one of them was we made some modifications to the animal shelter portion of the UDO at the request of one of the companies wanting to do business in town here. And we also made some changes to our downtown development zoning subdivision down there. Basically, we did away with some of the appearance items that we had in there that we've determined are no longer in compliance with state law. So we took some of those out. So we can't regulate appearance even in the downtown area too much. So that's kind of what we did the last time since the last time we've met. So thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. All right, so we're going to, okay, Mr. Ryan?
Mr. Chairman, we've been in consultation with the city attorney and other staff, and we do not believe that we're going to be able to meet the quorum standards. Therefore, we will not be able to take action. However, staff is prepared to discuss with you these items if you so desire tonight, which would allow you additional opportunity to consider the items, and we will look to see what we can do as far as setting up a special meeting where we can meet the quorum standards.
Okay. I knew we were kind of waiting on that, and that's, but okay, we want to make sure we do things right, you know, and keep things lawful. So, so I guess we'll just open this up to just a general discussion, give us some information, but that we will not, those who are watching us, we will not be able to take a vote on that tonight since we don't have a quorum, you know, here tonight. So, all right, thank you, Ryan. So I am glad that we are going to have some open discussion about this because I know it's a topic that needs to be addressed, and I know the school systems, you know, would want that information out there. So let's we'll move forward, and at least we'll let the public know what's going on, and that's what we're here. You know, we're here to serve the public.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, planning board members. Two items before you tonight that we will discuss. in advance of the next meeting that we will have, possibly a special meeting, deals with two text amendments. The first one is dealing with temporary use standards, which are found in Article 4 of the Unified Development Ordinance, specifically Section 4.4, temporary use standards. And this started because of some changes that the North Carolina General Assembly made and handed down some rule changes to the Onslow County Board of Education, as well as the other Board of Educations across the state. And it deals with classroom size reductions, mandated classroom size reductions that are going to be phased in over the next few years. And representatives from the school system reached out to staff back early in the spring, and we started having some dialogue and discussions about the current UDO standards and what that meant. So there's two immediate needs with two schools in Jacksonville, Bell Fork and Carolina Forest Elementary. Carolina Forest Elementary currently has 11 modular or temporary classrooms, and Bell Fork Elementary, I think, has 4. Per the Unified Development Ordinance, staff is allowed to approve up to 6 units, and then there's a duration. So staff can approve for 3 years, and then there's a city council extension that can take place, and there's some benchmarks that the school system needs to comply with. Well, with these changes to House Bill 1030, 13, and then subsequently 90, the school system is going to have to reduce the classroom size, specifically K through 3, and then 4th and 5th, there is no minimum standards, but the school system kind of has a magic number to where they don't like to exceed. So whereas the school system has a plan on how to forecast and how many basic classrooms are going to need, this has kind of thrown a wrinkle in their long-term plan, so they're having to update those plans like they do on a regular basis anyhow. And that's what necessitated the need to come to us and say, hey, we need to bring some in, and the rules don't exactly allow them to do that. So city staff and Mr. Steve Myers, who's here tonight from the school system, we sat down with the city council at a workshop session, I believe that was back in May, which you can find on page 10 of your agenda. It was on May 9th. And we kind of went over some of those standards and their long-term forecast. And staff was basically told, okay, well, let's go back and revamp the ordinance a little bit that allows staff the ability to do certain things and then allow city council to consider special circumstances such as this here. And that's what we basically have prepared. As you can see in attachment A, we've revamped the Unified Development Ordinance based on our meeting. And to kind of go over those items, since it's temporary structures, we decided to expand the temporary classrooms to and other school-related structures. So it doesn't matter whether it's a storage building, if it's an office, or if it's a classroom space. We're proposing that staff still be able to approve up to 6 temporary structures. Anything beyond 6 would require city council to approve, and we would suggest, based on the ordinance verbiage, that would happen through a zoning permit request, whether it's staff or city council. If it's more than 6, we would send a management report to city council, and council would have the opportunity to approve it, or if they need to discuss it, they could call it to a regular meeting. So that's what we are proposing with the ordinance language. Some other highlights is that I haven't already talked about is the school system's done a good job. I remember what the buildings looked like as a young kid coming through the Onslow County school systems myself. They basically are very uniform in color. They have a similar paint scheme, if not the same, to where they kind of look neutral and they blend in. And it's not a blue one and a red one and a green one. You know, they're all the same color. So we've decided to add that provision into the UDO to make sure that the school system continues that to where it is a uniform color. And we also decided to tweak the duration that makes it a little bit easier for, I think, everybody involved. And if you look on page 14, the duration, as we're doing throughout different text amendments, we're going to revise the Development Services Director to the city manager or his or her designee, which gives the manager the latitude to assign, whether it be him or her, the deputy manager, or whatever the job title may be at the time, who's responsible for that. So that's a change you will constantly see us make until we've revised all of them in the code. And you may see us bring a text amendment where we change all of them. There's just about 400 in there, and we just don't want to miss any. So we've made changes as we've gone. We need to bring that forward before you as well. But the other thing is, if you look, we're going to say that the period after 3 can be renewed for up to 2 additional years by the action of City Council. So staff can approve it for 3 years for up to 6. If they need it longer than that, or if they need more than 6, that then goes into a City Council approval action required. And we're saying that the definitive plans for their removal and replacement with permanent construction versus basically provided that. So we want to see that after the 3 years, they are aggressively pursuing the permanent construction. Granted, they get their funding from the Allenstown County Board of Commissioners, and there's a lot of moving parts there. So we want to provide the utmost flexibility for City Council to consider based on all of those provisions versus making this a you have to have done it. We just want to make sure that they are pursuing it, but not that they have done it. And the second piece is that a funding request shall be included at the next available budget session of the Allenstown County Board of Commissioners. So a little bit easier to kind of manage and keep up with that than we believe the way that it's currently written. So I think that highlights the main changes that you have here on pages, primarily on pages 14 and 15. There is one change there in the table on page 12 of your agenda, but it's primarily the items that are shown with underline and strike through on page 14 and 15, which is attachment A. And I believe I've done a pretty good job capturing that. You all may have questions of myself. Jason Houston is here on behalf of Parker & Associates, who's assisting the Allenstown County Board of Education, and Mr. Steve Myers, who's here on behalf of the Board of Education. I believe between the 3 of us, we should be able to get you a pretty good answer in case you do have any questions. And I'll open it up with, be happy to answer that you may have of me.
I have a question. At this time, are all the additional structures classrooms, or are some of them other usages at this time?
From what I understand, we haven't counted the numbers. So let's take Carolina Forest, for example. There's 11 modular or temporary classrooms. I don't know if they have a 12th and 13th building that would be, say, storage buildings. We haven't got into that far. I think the biggest thing is staff, we would be able to approve with a zoning permit up to 6. Beyond that, it would then revert to a City Council decision for City Council to decide, yes, we're going to approve, no, we're not, or we need to have a City Council meeting to discuss it further and understand better the request. Mm-hmm.
All mobile right now are classrooms right now.
Right. So all the mobiles are classrooms, but I'll give you an example. Parkwood Elementary School. There's 1 or 2 storage buildings that may be deemed temporary as a hypothetical. So we're trying to make sure that staff can give up to 6 temporary structures and approval. Beyond that, it's City Council, whether it be storage buildings or whether it be office buildings or whether it be classroom buildings. So staff, just like current, we can approve up to 6. We are proposing to leave that number as is. Now, planning board, City Council could say, no, staff, we want you to be able to approve up to 10. We want you to be able to do 15. But we started this revision and left it with how it's written now, which is 6. Beyond that requires City Council to take that action.
Do you have any idea how many additional ones you might need with these new laws?
That would be a better question for one of the applicants. Or I'm sorry, this is a staff initiated request, but for a member of either Mr. Houston or Mr. Myers. Yeah.
Okay. For next year, what we're looking at in the city of Jacksonville, we were looking at Belfork Elementary we needed 2 additional classrooms, and Carolina Forest Elementary additional classroom. The following year, we were looking at 2 additional classrooms for Belfork Elementary and 2 additional classrooms for Carolina Forest Elementary. Once we get into the 2020 and 2021 school year, we are doing some additional elementary school construction, and so I'd hate to say how far out we're going to be going in that process, but if we didn't have the construction, then we'd be asking for a few more at that time, but right now we have some construction going on that we're proposing to have going on, and the county's working with us right now for the funding.
I have a question. Do you know what percent of Carolina Forest student population is housed in temporary units?
Right now, we have, Carolina Forest is running close to about 900 students, give or take, and with 11 modular classrooms right now, we usually try to max those out at the most 20, so you'd say about 220. So probably, you're running probably right around 25%. Just round numbers thrown off the top of my head.
Good math.
My question has to do with, and I know there's some discussion about land area and the placement of these units. Is there any restriction based on how far they should be apart and how many you can put in there based on the landscaping of the campus?
So the standards currently, as they exist, they need to be placed behind the front and side walls of the principal facades to the maximum extent practicable. They also have to provide off-street parking based on the ratio. I think it's like 1.5 spaces per classroom. So it's not a large number of additional parking spaces that would be required. So there's not a magic number in terms of no more than this. There's some general standards, which is behind the front wall to a certain degree, and you have to have enough parking. So, I mean, there are some site constraints that may limit the total number, but we haven't dove into to kind of see what that may be. It'll be on a case-by-case basis. Some campuses, have a little bit more room than others.
That's what I was thinking about exactly. And also as in the future, as you look at additional construction of permanent buildings, it may get very tight on some campuses such as the Bell Forks Elementary School.
Yes, sir, and we do look at that. One of the things we look at when we start constructing in the school system is whether or not we can add on additional buildings to the site itself, the school itself, or if we need to be looking at building a new school. Okay, because I mean, ideally, we have the population there already, and it makes sense if we can add some more classrooms construction-wise, we want to do that. However, there are certain situations where the school has actually been built out. And a temporary classroom is just what it says, it's a temporary classroom. It's not taking into consideration that the cafeteria is not large enough, or the library is not large enough. And so in these situations right here, sometimes we have schools that are actually built out, and we're just doing a Band-Aid by putting a mobile classroom there right now until we can actually build a new school. And unfortunately, one example of that would be a Carolina Forest. So that being said, just to give you a heads up also, is you may have heard about this before. We have a joint education funding policy with the county right now. It's basically a handshake agreement that allows us to go ahead and start planning for new schools coming up based on the student population at the existing schools. Well, we've got, there's 2 areas that have been really hit hard, okay, and that's over in the Stump Sound area and over in the Dixon area. But when we start looking at building another elementary school over by Catherine Lake, what we'll be able to do is we'll be able to take off some of the pressure off some of these other schools, such as a stateside, and stateside with pressure coming off of stateside, which means we take pressure off of Carolina Forest. So we would be able to move things around, and it's almost like a shell game. I don't want to say it like that, but basically what we're doing, we'd be realigning all the student population in these areas, and with the building of a new school over by Catherine Lake, which we just received property for, then we'll be able to take some pressure off Carolina Forest. That's not going to solve everything. So the next set of schools that we're talking about after the Catherine Lake School area and the Stump Sound School area is to do some additional construction, build onto the existing school at the middle school, Northwoods Park Middle, and also look at another elementary school that would help relieve additional pressure on Jacksonville Commons Elementary and Carolina Forest and some of the schools in that area. So that's the next area after we accomplish these. So we've got a list of schools based on our student projections right now that we recognize that, yeah, we've got these areas that are just busting at the seam. We got to do something with them. And then we also got these other areas that are growing, and we know we recognize that, so we want to identify them and address them as soon as possible. And that's why we're looking at another elementary school in right around the 2025 school year timeframe to build another elementary school that would help offset some of the pressure for Commons Elementary and Carolina Forest Elementary as well. I know I said a lot, but
If I can, Mr. Chairman, there's one thing you point out to City Council that I think it would be beneficial for the board to hear, and that is your magic number. I mean, the school system, you want X number of students in terms of the largest size, elementary-wise.
that's right.
So that it's not like a huge college kind of atmosphere, if you will, in terms of numbers. So I thought that was a key point that you mentioned to City Council. I thought that would be beneficial.
For elementary schools, it's not like a college. We don't want auditorium classrooms, okay? And so we have, and not only that, I mean, K through 5, we have certain requirements. And the state mandated us to have, within 4 years, we're going to have 17 students per kindergarten grade, 16 students per first grade, and for second and third grade, we'll be going up to 18 students. That's about 12.5% less than what we had before. Okay, so if I had a capacity of a school, and I'm going to use a round number, so bear with me. If I had a capacity of 1,000 students, well, I've just dropped it down to about 880 students. So I've lost 120 student capacity just with the state mandated laws. 1,000 student elementary school is huge. And Mr. Homer, I mean, I know you were in the education system prior to this, and what we've tried to do in the past was try to keep our elementary schools right around the 650 student range. That's why you see what we did with Belfork Elementary and some of the others. But because of the continued growth in Onslow County and even in Jacksonville, we recognize that we can't stay with that 650 student elementary school anymore because it's not as cost effective. When we build a new school, you get more classrooms for a cheaper price when you do it all at once. So we've gone up to about 850 students right now for a school. If you go higher than that, what happens then is you've got 850 children anywhere from 5 years old all the way up to 11 years old. And in that process, it's hard to manage that many students in a small area, I mean, in an area like that without causing some additional instructional concerns. So that's why we want to keep our student population at the 850. We don't want to put 2,000 in an elementary school. It's just not efficient.
I do have a question. The attendance, the student population at Carolina Forest covers what residential areas mainly? Was it Carolina Forest and then Carolina Plantation?
That's right. When we built the school initially, and that was back in, and don't hold me to the number, I think it was right around 2004. It was to provide a community school for Carolina Forest, okay? Since then, in the last 5 years, what you've seen is right across the road on Ramsey Road, Carolina Plantation has developed, and it's about a 1,200 unit development. Well, 1,200 unit development adds another 300 students, give or take. So what you saw with Carolina Forest, the growth is just the additional growth right around the school itself.
One other thing is, think about Carolina Forest, as Mr. Myers stated, 2003-4 timeframe, that sounds about correct. They've done a wing expansion since then.
When we first built the school, it was built for about 650 students, as I mentioned before. with all the growth that happened at the Carolina Forest, even before Carolina Plantation came around. In the 2006, 2007 bond, we added additional classrooms to bring it up, to build it up even more. I think we put 8 additional classrooms in there. So that's why we're at a point with Carolina Forest that's built out.
And at one time, I think the modulars were completely gone. You know, they didn't need them, but then that continued growth so that before the UDO was adopted, just to kind of give you the background on where we are today, they submitted a request under the old standards, not the current standards, and that went through the management report, city council approved, so they have 11 there now. And now with these new laws going into effect, the state mandates, they're asking for some additional. So those 2 schools, that's kind of what started the dialogue.
As a general rule of thumb, you can, for all the elementary schools, we can say that we lost approximately 12% of capacity just with the state mandated laws.
And the problem is that you can't go back and make the rooms smaller than they are.
No, sir.
If you've got 10 rooms on your campus, you've got 10 rooms on your campus. You can't magically make them 12 or 15. You're stuck with that.
And one of the things too that we didn't mention, but we did mention to the council earlier, and I think it's been publicized quite a bit. We continually grow about 300 students a year in the county. And 300 students a year, if we had an elementary school that's 650 students like we would like, that's almost a full elementary school every 2 years. And so we see that, and it's not, and one of the things that people mention, well, that's dependent on the base. Well, we see base, sometimes they go on an upswing, sometimes they do some right sizing. Consistently over the years, we may see a little fluctuation one year, but it catches up the next year. Over the last 30 years, we've been pretty consistent at 300 students a year growth in Onslow County. And so we're not shrinking. What it comes down to is the county's not shrinking.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, thank you. Any further discussion with that one? All right, would you like to move on to the other one to bring us up to speed? Okay.
Chairman, members of the board, next item for discussion is another result of a state mandate, and this is a proposed amendment to our subdivision standards, basically subdivision types found in the Article 2 of the UDO. During the 2017 legislative session, the State Law 2017-10, or Senate Bill 131, was adopted. And that law basically did 2 things. It created a new type of exempt subdivision, and it created a new category of subdivision. The exempt is added to our list of, currently I believe we have 5 exempt type of subdivisions, and the new one is to settle on a estate. This makes it exempt of our subdivision standards, still needs to meet our zoning standards, but if a property owner inherits property, or someone passes away and leaves it to multiple heirs, and a court says each one gets these lots, that's a map to settle an heir or settle an estate. And we don't regulate it for the lot, we don't regulate it for subdivision standards, just we review the plat and would review it for zoning standards. We currently do that now, it's just never been codified, and the state making it, amending North Carolina General Statute 168-376, put it in there, and so we wanted to update the UDO and bring that in. With that, they also created a new category called the qualifying subdivision. This isn't an exempt subdivision. They had a number of criteria that a qualifying subdivision needed to meet. Basically, that it doesn't meet one of the other exemptions. that it had not been subject to a division within 10 years, and that the division would not result in more than 3 lots. And, I'm sorry, didn't mean to back up. And that, let me look at this real quick.
Greater than 5.
That's right, greater than 5, I'm sorry, greater than 5 acres. Reading the discussion that the Senate committee had on this bill and the senator who introduced it, I believe it was a result of those properties that were kind of the no man's land that kind of didn't qualify for an exempt, but could get treated as a minor subdivision, trigger other requirements that may be outside of someone's fiscal ability to adhere to, be it utilities or sidewalks and such. And so this gives another avenue that's state mandated and would be in our ordinance if it was ever adopted. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. It's just another tool to divide property and have it not be regulated by subdivision. Would still need to meet our zoning regulations in terms of lot size, width, and dimensions.
Am I understanding that this is something that's state mandated, and we're bringing our subdivision within compliance of the state mandate?
UDO in compliance with this proposed amendment. Even if we weren't, we would still have to adhere to it. But this gives someone who opens up our UDO and says, oh, hey, that, they do recognize that they're doing it, and just keeps us consistent.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Is there any other items we need to discuss?
Check your calendars, and we'll be in touch to see if we can set up a special meeting to where we can take official action. And I appreciate your time and patience this evening, and great questions. And we'll be getting in touch with all the board members here shortly.
Thank you for the information brought before us, and hope to continue on next time and do what we need to do to get this on to city council, and so everybody can move ahead. So
Thank you, Chair.
thank you for your time. Y'all have a nice evening.